results, I think we can do that for you.
All right. Well, thank you, Kyle, and thank you all for coming. It's a privilege, and I'm going to start off talking about a lot of reasons why we feel it's a privilege to be here with you all, to be able to work on a product that is so important in our industry these days with so much going on. And I think a lot of you have not yet hit the age discrimination limit. I think it's 40. And years ago, I used to feel like I was the youngest person in the room, and now well beyond that. But I've spent half my lifetime working on Synergi Electric, and it's been great. And I love power distribution. I got started at an early age working in West Texas on the line crew. I went to school with Professor Kirsting, who was always insulting engineers, even worse than the line crews were, and just really drove home how important power engineering was, how awesome our country was with the distribution infrastructure that we have, and really launched us into this utility management program and other programs that we had at New Mexico State. So I went on to BG&E, Virginia Tech, started with Scott & Scott in 1994, just up the road here in Seattle, and then we were acquired by Stoner Associates, and the rest is history. And I gave a presentation at Distributech, and I'm going to steal some of the slides from that. If you were there, a little bit of a rerun, but the talk was on what is the edge. And when I was preparing the talk, I didn't know what the edge is, and maybe I still don't. But these are some of the things that come up when we talk about distribution edge. New technology, keeping up with what's happening with customers on the edge, and then incorporating customers into the operations, incorporating them into the market, using them for demand side management and other sorts of programs. And we're tackling all of that. And those are, high level things. When I was getting ready for this presentation, I was at this spot here. This is our YMCA in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Is kind of an old town. George Washington, Lincoln, all these people visited the law school there in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And so when we moved there, that building in the upper left was our YMCA. And it had the green lime tiles, the hospital tiles and everything, and it was all dark. And so they just finished this thing right before COVID hit, and so it was shut down for like a year and a half. But I was there, and it was dark, and I had my headphones on, continuing to work out. Thought, well, this is great. They've really cut down their power use because they're getting all this sunlight through the windows. And then I look around, and it was just me and one other person in the gym, and the power had gone out, and so they booted us out. And as I was walking down this street, and we live off over here, walking down this street, it was just a huge pile of cars coming down this street, people coming out of these buildings. Walmart is down here. It was just a flood of people. It was like a big concert had let out. And it really stuck in my mind how essential power is to everything. It seems like maybe even 10 years ago, those businesses could have still operated. People could pay with cash or whatever. Now nothing happens. There's no electricity, nothing happens. And it was striking that day. So if you were to go from here over here a little ways, you'd see this 3.5 megawatt solar facility sitting right there in Carlisle. And that was no help that day. And we all understand why, but maybe in the coming years, it will be a help. Maybe things can happen to facilitate and utilize that solar in that situation. And so we have to get ready for that with the things that we're doing in Synergi. So our role in our team here, this is a post-it that I keep on the side of my monitor here. And so I read this every day. And what is our team? So we are all of us in this room today, this is our team. We rely on you all. We want your feedback. We want to understand how we're doing with our product, with our client support, what we need to do moving forward, how we can make our offering to you better. The second one is, why is this exciting? These are the most exciting times in power distribution. No doubt. There's just so much going on. So much technology. Every one of your utilities in this room are doing different things, tackling problems in different ways. There's just innovation and craftsmanship everywhere. And as an engineer, I think that is awesome. And that's why we're engineers, is we want to build things and do things. So how do we win? I think we're winning now, and that's a tough one. You know, what does winning mean? And this was a few days ago. I was here at, my wife and I were at Smith Rock, and you can see the chalk lines. So a lot of people have come up and climbed up to this point, and this person here is going up a little further. So we don't want this to be a model of where we are. We don't want to be by ourselves. It needs to be a team effort. And so we've got to work together, figure out how we're going to do these things that need to be done. That's very exciting because we're dealing with problems that are new. You know, we're building distribution systems, serving customers in ways that have never been done before. And so we're working together to do that. And so Synergi Electric is not a process. In fact, I was talking to you, Kurt, at lunch about this book that we read, and what this author, it's kind of a book more on business mythology and things like that, but the person is saying you don't want this thing called agile, which is a big software term. You don't want that to dictate the way forward. You want to empower your team so that they can move forward. So for Synergi Electric, we don't want to build something that's going to dictate how you do something at your utility. This is what we want to be. We want to be this workshop up here. We want to have all these tools that you're comfortable using, that you're happy, that you're energized to use, that you feel proud and engaged to use. And we want to have the nice view out the window up there. There's a little TV over here so you can get your information. So that's the workshop that we want to build with Synergi Electric, so that you can sit down and use the tools that you like to use. And then this piece right here is, and does that resonate with anybody in here? All right, so it's a pretty subtle quote from a pretty well-known person, but I think that's another posted on my monitor now. And you know, as we're moving forward, we've got all these folks who have stood behind us and helped us get to where we are now, and have a lot you know, they're thinking about us, they've helped us develop, and so every day I come into my office saying, okay, who am I honoring today? Maybe it's some of you, maybe it's my mentors, maybe it's me, a family member, but we're lucky to be in a position to work, to have jobs where we can build stuff and do things, and we can honor the folks that have come before us and build a future. So that's exciting. And this slide is just in here because it's just awesome to have Otters on the slide. So this was at Smith Rock also. If you get a chance to go there, it's an otter, I guess they're a family, but they were, we chased them all around this big rock thing, and that was pretty neat to see these things outside of a zoo. Oops. All right, so I'm going to be flipping back and forth between Synergi and these slides here, talking about things that we are focused on. And you know, this is the big deal right here, right? We've got the impact of solar, battery storage, all these systems, and how it's affecting your distribution systems and your customers. So we have to be able to simulate that, to give you the tools to simulate it in a way that makes sense. And this is a model, right? And you know, the cliche is the model is always wrong. But for engineers, the model is the encapsulation of what could happen. It's a way for you to look at your system and say, well, these are the problems that we may see. Let's build this thing so that we're really confident that we're looking at all the problems that might occur on our system. So, you know, the residential rooftop, these things here, we're going to have speakers from EPRI. Is that tomorrow, Kyle? Yeah, EPRI is going to be talking about some details on these things that we're modeling. Switching, all this stuff has got to be handled moving forward with Synergi Electric. Hosting capacity is a big deal, and for us, making this a fundamental offering in Synergi is essential. It's not a module. None of this DER stuff is a module. This is stuff that is so important to the daily planning and the operation of the utility that it's just in there with a button click. So if you haven't run hosting capacity in Synergi, if load flow runs, you can run hosting capacity. And you can do your map coloring. I won't spend time showing how you can also hit a button and bring this up in Google Earth. But this stuff is critical. And for if you're not on the engineering side, what this is a map of is showing how much solar generation you can connect to the system. So it's really hard to read, but like the red lines are 10 megawatts, down to the blue lines are like 2 megawatts. So a lot of utilities will publish these maps so that developers can come in and say, well, we want to invest in solar, where can we build it so that we've got a pretty good chance that the utility is going to let us connect. So hosting capacity and various flavors of this we'll get into, I think it's Wednesday. We'll talk about different types of hosting capacity we have. Peak load flow, I think, is something that is probably seen its day. I don't know that moving forward there's going to be a lot of value in peak load flow. And the load flow that runs when we have our peak demand. What we have to be running now is all these different sorts of load flow, looking at time and trying to ferret out when there could be a problem. And so maybe the problems are at peak, but oftentimes it could be at Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning when there's a lot of solar generation, very little load. Peak is almost like the minimum load. So now we've got issues at all sorts of time of day. With battery storage, it could even be at night. So with Synergi now, we've got all these tools that are going to be running overtime. And if applications don't run overtime, now you can bet that we're working on them. And eventually, everything is going to just be time range based. So what does that mean? Well, it means we've got a lot of results, lots of data, and we have to be able to churn through all that data and present meaningful information to you. So we're all ears on that. You know, if we run, I mean, the buzzword is 8760. So let's say we run 8760 every hour for a full year on your system, and we come up with all the voltages and capacity and all this information. How can we present that in a way that is useful to you? You know, we can certainly create lots of numbers, but that's not valuable if it just doesn't mean anything. And usually for me anyway, the more numbers, the less meaningful it is. So ideas that you have on what we can fish out of these big massive runs and present is important. So that's about what, where, and when, you know, and so we're dealing with car chargers, so we've got a model for that, and we've been adding some features to that. We'll get a chance to look at it later when we talk about the DER stuff. But with the car chargers, there's different charging rates that you can use. We've got all sorts of solar models, right? You can do residential rooftop, commercial rooftop, solar farms, and then we've got this thing, which we're getting started in. And all this equipment up here is modeled in Synergi with local controls, switch caps, regulator banks, LTCs, you know, all this stuff. As we progress, you know, these things, and you all know more than I do, are going to be controlled centrally, right? Your ADMS system, you're going to have substation control systems, all kinds of new systems that are being developed. And so we have to be able to represent and model those in some sufficient way that is close to what they're going to be doing in reality. And that's a huge deal. So we have the ADMS model in Synergi that you might have looked at, and we're going to be doing a lot more with that. And I know you folks at Idaho Power, you have these substation control systems for CAPs, and other clients have talked to us about ADMS systems for cap control. Seems like cap control is the big area right now, but regulator controls are, I think, just as plausible. So controlling these things for the entire system, well, we're going to figure it out. So we're going to have to work as a team on this, figure out how we're going to do it, what we need to do. Secondary modeling is a big area for Synergi Electric. And how many folks are modeling secondary now in your systems? Okay, 2. That, I think it's more than that. That's yeah. So in here, there's only 2 folks from utilities modeling secondary. So we've got it. Okay, so we're up to 3 now. So we built it to be a progression. We didn't want to say, all right, you're not modeling secondary, now you are modeling secondary. So there's switches and things in Synergi to allow you to progress your way into secondary modeling. But we think it's a question here. We think it is crucial, or it will be crucial. So maybe not in 2022, but in the coming years, it's going to be crucial to have this secondary model. Well, why is that? Well, because there's a whole bunch of these. We saw in Kenneth's presentation this morning the ramping up of this. Load control, demand side management, all these sorts of programs. Everybody's got, you know, some areas everybody's got solar on their roof. So that's just going to be developing more and more. And then we've also got power electronics that sit here on the secondary, these transformers, right? They're doing things, the StatComs, D-stats, other equipment that you guys will have to introduce us to. We need to be able to deal with that. And that's, I guess, the edge to make sure that the customers are represented, that sort of equipment is represented in the model. All right, so here's aggregators, all the different sides. These are kind of non-physical engineering things. These are more like contractual things where we've got customers working together that's going to impact the loads. We have to represent that in Synergi also. So that's going to be load shapes today, but maybe down the road we do start to represent the contracts more. And I'm not familiar with it, but I do believe on Synergi Water, they've done some of that sort of contractual work in that product. So I think that's something that we're going to be getting into down the road. PV and storage. So we've got these huge battery systems that are sitting there for grid support. And this is a plot from a client showing the output of one of these grid support battery systems. And the challenge with these is that they don't really care what's happening in the feeder. They're doing all of this because of what's happening in the transmission or the sub-transmission. And so we've got to have some sort of information in Synergi to tell us how they're operating so that we can do that simulation. And then you all are familiar with our PV curves. And then inverter modeling is an area that we're getting into. Who all is participating in the DER modeling user group? Should be some hands for that because I've seen you all in the meeting. Okay, good, good. So EPRI, I said before, they're going to be talking, and they're heading that up. And it's great because it's really pushing us to get into this level of modeling for these inverters. So that is coming up. All right, so what's new in 2022? Starting off with some light stuff here, and I could probably just go down to Synergi here. And sorry, I don't have 2 screens, but so the info tab is something that I'll go grab a recloser over here. Here's a recloser. It's got a lot of. The info tab is down here just to show supplemental data. So this is kind of a summary of data, or maybe some data that you just don't see on the panels. A lot of times it's calculations and things that'll show up over here. So it's very useful, and it occurred to us finally, let's just put this tab over here so that we can show this information on this tab. That way you can just click around on these devices. So that's no big deal. But what is a big deal is now this gives us a way to show information that may be more beneficial, more calculations and information that may be very nice to have handy on this panel over here. So those kinds of features we add a lot of, and they're GUI types of things, but I think they're useful to us to get information into our subconscious, so we don't have to focus so much on going to this report or doing this and that. It's just there. We can almost subconsciously bring up this tab, click on this thing, see this information. So that is the info tab work, and if you've got stuff that you would want to see on this tab, then please let us know. Scatter plots, and when you run an analysis, we're going to do this in the hands-on lab tomorrow, so we'll just do this directly. But the nice thing about these scatter plots, I mean, they're not beautiful to look at. If you want a beautiful plot, export the data to Excel. You hit that Export to Excel button, bring it into a spreadsheet, and then use Microsoft's. But if you want something like this, these little dots here, you can right-click on the dot, say, take me to that spot in the model, and then you know you can look at that section in detail. And so the scatter plots, time boxes are new, and let me go ahead and see if I can run one of these. Sorry, I'm clumsy with a single monitor here, clumsier. So the time boxes, if I'll turn off the report here, let's run a load flow, and we're going to go through all these different ways to show results tomorrow. And so you're familiar with the results box, right, where you can bring up volts and amps, this kind of thing. Well, we find ourselves doing time range analysis so much with clients that we wanted a way that we can look at this information quicker. So you can bring up, right-click on a section, bring up a time box. So there's volts on that thing. We can go to a section here, bring up a time box, and let's look at, I don't know, here's kW flow. And so you get these things up, and they just hang around. It's really great for 2 monitors. And then you can hit this running person here. And it's going to run through a day here and then give you this information. So this is a run, this is June weekday that we're looking at. And I can see my voltage over there. It's downstream from this regulator, so it's choppy, right? And then I can see my kW flow. So this thing I think is going to be pretty helpful when you're dealing with time range analysis, which is, for us, it's pretty much ubiquitous, where you're going to be coming in. If I'm doing analysis, I'm going to hit this 24 button and look at my situation over a full day. And so those time boxes are a way to look at specific pieces of information over a day and then run the analysis that way. So you guys holler if you've got questions too, or comments. Peak picking. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think it depends. You probably saw that there was only a few results, and so we just want to get more input from you all, but it would be, you can do like the taps. So if you right click on a regulator or an LTC, you can say show me the taps. When I picked on KW, it's going to be downstream. We don't have one for load. That's probably something we could put in, you know, the load on this large customer, something like that. So yeah, we're anxious. I think that's going to be a very good tool. And so we can start adding bells and whistles as you start to use it. Peak picking is, I think we did this earlier in the year, and we got more clear on what the peak was because we were using KVA, and that was a problem with high generation areas. So non-engineers, it's the KVA is the magnitude of the what they call it, active power. And so it's always positive. And when you have generation on a system, the generation can result in negative power flows. And so when we were looking for peak KVA, we were missing the points that we wanted. So anyway, we clarified the nomenclature. We worked a lot on this peak picking tool. Just talking to you all the last couple of days, a lot of folks have mentioned peak here. And I think that's a common setting to use peak KW. I go in, and it's probably not realistic for, if at your desk, I would probably stick with peak. But in my position, I use specified time just so I know where Synergi is. And so it's usually June, weekday, that kind of thing. So peak is something that you're going to use. We worked on the algorithms. Important to know about picking is that we're not running load flow at every hour. So we're going through and we're quickly just adding up the load and estimating the generation to find that peak. So it's not guaranteed to give you the peak that you might see if you ran a full load, like a 576 analysis. So that is work that we did, but it should be more consistent. It seems like, from what I've heard from clients, it is working a whole lot better. This came in on our training class that, or it might have been the Q&A session. So our training is on Wednesdays, Q&As on Thursday, and somebody asked, hey, can we just have a list of connected KVA values? And so we put this report into load flow. And this is the kind of stuff we love to do. Somebody needed something, and we've got a place to put it. So when you run load flow analysis, go down here now, and whatever version this came out in, and there's connected KVA details, pick a feeder, and then we've got, you see the categories for the various load types in here. You can dump this out to Excel or whatever. So I forgot who the client was that asked for this, but it's what we want to do. Somebody needed something, and we built it. Hopefully it's built the way that they wanted it. This controller's report is another subtlety in load flow. If you go into facilities, controllers here, it's a summary of the inverters. So we can see, I'm sorry, not the inverters, the mechanical controllers. So substation tap changers are in here. You can see this information, switch capacitors, voltage regulators. So you can kind of look through this whole list and see a rundown of all the different controllers and make sure everything is operating at the point that you would expect it to operate. So a couple of examples of report stuff that we did. Let's see, how are we doing for time here? So I have practiced on this, and those of you who attend the training classes have witnessed me struggling on this, getting confused on this, so I'm going to take the challenge here. So how many of you guys have load tap changers that use bidirectional or cogen modes? Is it a lot? A lot of people? One, okay. Okay. Maybe I'll come back to this, and I don't want to take up too much time on this, but yeah, let me come back to this, and I'm going to make note here. Oh, yeah. Yes. I think so. Yeah, I think that's just on the map itself. So if you go in here, and we've run load flow on this, you click on a section and look at the results tab. Then down in here we've got connected KVA into right here. Oh, of what all of the specifics downstream from that? No. But we could make that. We could make that. Does that be good? Okay. So it sounds like you would want to say, all right, well, on this section right here, I want to click on that section. We would put it right here, I believe. And if you're not familiar with this, these are special reports. And you can see some of the things, and it's kind of a hodgepodge of stuff. And so something like segment summary, I think, is brings up the special. So we've got the framework for it. And so I think we could very easily just come in here, and so what you're looking for is a list of all the downstream loads and the connected KVA values. Yeah, yeah, we could have fit right in there. Okay. Yeah. Oops. All right. So now we've got the screener application, and we'll tackle the screener more when we get into the DER section. But this list here is getting pretty long. What the screener does is it goes to a section and it starts adding generation. And so you can see across the top here is the generator size. We get up to 5 megawatts. And then as the generation is increased, these are all the types of things we're looking at. Delta voltage, loading, you know, all these different sorts of potential problems. And when we hit a screen limit, the number turns red. So we can see here that at 1 megawatt, you know, we've got a problem with delta volts all trip. So that means if all the generators were to trip at once, we would have more than the 5 volts that we allow for a voltage flicker. So clients have been giving us screens to add to this list. We're happy to put them in. We want to put in more. I think there's stuff in the New York Rev we're missing, Rule 21, there's some others, and I know we're missing screens from those. So the stuff that you would use, let us know. Our goal with this application is that you just say, well, I've got a customer, they want to put in a big facility over here, click on it, we generate this report. And so it gives you a kind of a running start at evaluating that location. Okay, we've done some work on this, and so tomorrow when EPRI, the folks from EPRI present, they went in and evaluated our volt watt and volt bar controllers in February, and they found problems particularly with this one. And we asked them to go ahead and present those problems, so they're going to talk about those. We have done work. We do think that we've got these in pretty good shape at this point. And so that was February. We're sitting here in September. But we're going to go through and run through their test cases and try to self-assess what we've got, and hopefully everything's in good shape now. But they've done really great work, and we really appreciate their help on this. So these inverters are in here, and this is a plot here that you can generate, and this is in Excel. And I'm going to show you some other tools to do it even faster in Synergi. These inverter models are very important, and so we want to give you ways to be able to look at the output. But in the meantime, we've got probabilistic load flow, and that concept is something that was crucial for us to get into the software. Now, there's not a whole lot of settings yet, but a lot of times what we're trying to do is we're doing the heavy work to get the application built, get everything tied in, to make sure that it's functioning well. And we're not going to gold plate this thing. We don't want to put in a whole bunch of features without really knowing what you need. And so we're going to put in the minimum, and there's a word for that. Minimum viable software, folks. Is that a